Thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Well, we have had a very nice experience watching your film.
Oh, great.
So that's.
Well, you can just speak for everyone. That's great.
I think I can speak for everyone, relatively.
So the question was, did I know that it was
That
gonna
it
be
was, yeah, it was gonna be. Did you think you were gonna do like an interview, a short thing, or you always had planned something longer?
well, we had nothing planned.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was no intention when we started working on the film. I mean, with that moment at Brighton Beach, it was just
Right.
Something clicked, and it was a way to continue the creative process.
Right.
But it wasn't like we're gonna make a film.
Yeah.
And we had, I mean, as you could see, the camera work gets better as it goes along. But yeah, it was, it wasn't. It was very much about the process and not about we're making a film.
Right.
So,
And what is going to happen at the end?
yeah, exactly. So I just kept shooting and shooting for, 13 years, and
That was my next question.
yeah.
13 years?
Yep. Yeah, and so we stayed very close throughout, and Irene passed away last Tuesday, so this was the first time that I've seen the film since. So it was a very different experience. It was actually really emotional watching it. Yeah.
It was very emotional for me, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I found that it was very deep and very about personality, about creativity, and the fact that you don't lose that.
Mm-hmm. No.
That's really amazing, because most people think that Alzheimer's or loss of memory or whatever. I think now Alzheimer's used to be a guy that nobody knows, nobody knew earlier on, but now everybody's familiar with him. But
yeah. Well, I think it affects people differently in different ways, and I think that for Irene, she never forgot, ever that she was a playwright. She always knew.
Oh, yes.
And it was ingrained in her DNA that she may not have been writing, but she was still a playwright.
Thinking about it.
Oh yeah, yeah, and seeing the world through that lens. So yeah, which made her great.
How long had you known her before deciding to?
I met her. I wrote about theater. I was a theater. I did personality profiles on playwrights, and my brother's an actor, and so I was a journalism major, journalist. So I started writing about theater, and she was my favorite playwright, and I read her in college and was completely blown away. And so I was writing a longer piece about playwrights and critics, and she was in the phone book, and I just called her up and I said, I'm writing this article, and she said, great, I'll meet you on the corner, and we'll, and so I was on the corner, and I'd only been familiar with the portrait of her on her plays, which is very stern, very formidable. And when she met me, she was just like bounding down the street with a gray bob and these red glasses, not dissimilar. This is not intentional, but she had these big red glasses. And she just, we sat down, and she didn't answer any of my questions. She really could care less about what I was writing about. But we became friends, and it was like a 5-hour, 6-hour sit down over many beers. Interview. Yeah, the first interview. Yeah. Okay. And so whenever I was in the West Village, I would just call her up, and we would go out thrift store shopping or antique shopping, or just like walk through streets, go to cafes. And, yeah.
No, it's really, because it does have a flowing that's really nice about, not only about her as a person, but about the life in the village.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as it used to be, and as it might still be for a little bit more, but
that sense of community,
sense of community, that people meet each other in the street.
Yeah, and that what it used to be like, and her lamenting the loss of that, right. And also lamenting the loss of her not being a part of writing,
right.
Within that. Yeah,
that she's part of the community, but not exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And her feelings about it are very good. But I like to open it to people and what questions you might have. Yes.
You read her works. What is your favorite work that you like, and what made her so different?
I think, well, I mean, I have many favorites, but the first play that I ever read of hers was called The Cognitive Life, and it stayed with me as one of my. There's two that are ranked. One is Promenade, is a musical she wrote early on, and as we showed some of the songs from that in the film. And that to me was very much her spirit when I met her. It was very like of those old musicals that she wrote that was really whimsical. And then The Cognitive Life, which is a very dark story about a abusive uh, South American or Latin American military officer, and so about her, what makes her so different is that she wasn't writing by any kind of formula. Each of her plays started from a different place. So, it would be an overheard scrap of dialogue or foreign language tapes or an ironing board, or, she used found objects a lot. So you never knew what you were going to get with the Fornes play. And so there was and so you were just continually surprised. And her use of language was very specific too. And that could be also because English was her second language. But it was just, she really was able to become the character. So you really feel like you are experiencing what the character is. She suffered with the character. And she was very much like Chekhov in that way. So there's a lot when you go, I mean, they're not for everyone, her plays are not, some of them are hard, hard to take. And she goes to the dark, really dark places that, that are scary sometimes to go to. But yeah, there's just nothing like, I mean, it's like they're literary artifacts too. When you read them on the page, you really feel like you're reading. So they just don't, I mean, she says that a play that's on paper is completely incomplete, but I have to say that her plays on paper are actually really like reading, short novels. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question, but there's a lot to.
Did she always write in English?
She wrote one play, she wrote a couple plays in Spanish. Yeah.
At the beginning?
Yeah, in the beginning.
Okay, that's kind of.
The first play was in Spanish, like based on letters from her cousin. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's really interesting for those of us that have shared that same thing of knowing more than one language and thinking in more than one, because it's completely different.
And it makes the language. I mean, I think that really had an effect on the way she used language, and the way she put words together was so like it's like something like you've never read before. Yeah.
Another question? Yes.
So you knew her for quite a while. What determined the trajectory of when you kind of wrap this up and reach a conclusion with the film?
Well, I shot for a really long time. I just didn't know, like, because I didn't really know what we were doing, so I was like, I kept documenting. And there was a moment in the edit when I found this fantastic editor who was able to create scenes where, we were filming fragments, and the camera would be on the floor, her mic would be on the back, this kind of. So the editor, we came in, she was amazing, and Melissa Neidick, and she just really found the rhythm of what to do with all this footage. But there was a moment, we decided we would only, even though I shot for over a decade, we only used 3 years of the footage. So this period was from 2003 to 2006. And because there's a moment when Irene stops acknowledging the camera and stops knowing exactly what we're doing. And for me, it's so much a collaboration, and it's about maintaining her dignity and like what kind of movie would Irene have wanted about her life. And so that was the biggest priority in editing it. So we ended it I mean, I forgot that scene where we say goodbye to each other, and she says goodbye to the camera, and my editor found it and said, "I think this is the end of your film," and I was like, "Oh my God, I totally forgot ever filming that." And but that was really the moment where, like, after that, she stopped. So that was pretty clear for us. But I think I didn't know how far we would go, and so so there's a lot more footage that is on hard drives in my apartment.
Cutting the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Another question, maybe?
I think it was a remarkable film, and what got me was, even though she didn't have a lot of memory, she would say profound things that came out of her mouth, like in the elevator when she said, "I'm alone."
Mm-hmm.
And even when you're prompting her, that was her original thought. So you can see as it progressed throughout that she lost more of her memory as she went along, but she still maintained the joy of life, and really remarkable portrait. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's such a, I mean, so much of what we see about dementia is really frightening and terrifying, and this was presenting an alternative view to how we can engage with people and people we love, and like, I mean, with Irene, it was never, everyone always says, "Did she remember you?" And it was never about that for us. It was about, there was never a sense of loss on my part. I mean, later as the disease progressed, there was, but I didn't have a sense of who she was before we met, because she's always had the disease from the very first time that I met her, but I didn't know that then. So I didn't have the sense of like, oh, this is great mind, and isn't this devastating? For me, it was like, oh my God, this is this great mind, and it was just about that. So and really focusing on what remains rather than what is lost. So that's what we tried to do. So I'm glad that it resonated. Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't really have a question, but just comments. When she was in the doctor's office and she was writing down, she was trying to write loss of memory, but she wrote loss of me.
Mm-hmm.
That was really poignant to me when she wrote that. And you know, of course, she finished it, as you know.
Yeah.
But then also when she was in Miami, and it was just really touching how she was talking about the creative community and like, how would I do theater here in Miami, you know? And so you did a great job kind of giving the flavor of the different areas, you know, Miami, Cuba, Havana, and New York. So I just thought that was interesting. She could tell, I mean, I don't know how far along she was in her dementia at that point, but she was very wanting to be with her people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I really got that strongly from that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it
It
was
was
cool. I mean, you know, it was nice to see that.
Well, I like the fact that it was not a clinical analysis,
Yeah.
even though we had the sequence with the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
That is more that her mind is still working, and her creativity and her feelings, and she has a sense of humor, and you know, catches herself as making the mistakes and all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you didn't show the final
Yeah. There was
times, because that's for somebody that has, unfortunately, I have seen that disease close. And this is the first film that I see, fiction or documentary, that makes me feel good about it.
That's great.
You know, that makes you feel that the feelings, the communication is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found that amazing. Thank you very much for your film.
Thank you.
What kind of career have you had so far with the film?
Well, we premiered it in February at MoMA in New York City.
In that Katie Brew.
Yeah, Kathy Brew. Yeah.
Kathy Brew.
And then it's gone on. Then I've just been going into festivals, and we had a week-long run. They brought it back to MoMA at the end of August.
When they do this week.
Yeah, they had a week. It was really nice. Yeah, and then we also had like a marathon of her plays at the Public Theater. In conjunction with that, so people could go to both, which was really, really great. And then, yeah, so we just found out that we're going to the Havana Film Festival,
Oh, good.
which will be
Excellent.
great. I was waiting, I was like, oh my God, we didn't get to Havana. So we get to take the film home to her family, which is really important.
Right.
And they haven't seen it. I haven't seen them in 14 years, so it'll be great to see them. And so, yeah, so we're going in the next week. Tomorrow I go to Seattle, and then we go to London, showing it. Yeah, so it's
It's
been
making its
playing.
way.
It's making its way in the world. Yeah, it's having a nice little life, which is great.
And you have a wonderful distributor, which is Women Make Movies.
Yeah,
they
they've
have
been fantastic. Yeah.
fantastic for any kind of film. Well, as long as it's made by women.
Yeah,
and
yeah, about women. Yeah, it's very specific.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah.
Yes.
Just a comment. I really appreciate kind of how we think about when we lose our memory and we're aging and things like that. Is that we forget where our keys are, or like which key goes in which knob, or an anniversary, or whatever. But she never forgot how to have fun. And I really love that the relationship you have with her, and that we were able to see kind of those raw moments where she was just like unabashedly herself, and even though she wore her wrinkles and her things, and she maybe didn't have as much on her, there was still so much of her there even towards the end, so that was really beautiful to see. Thank you.
And also that, as they say in the beginning, so few theater professionals or students know her now, which is remarkable considering how important she was as an educator and as she is as a playwright. And your film's so important to have captured, like you said, your impression of her was formidable from the cover. To capture that spirit which informed her artistry is invaluable. It's so beautiful. I'm so inspired by watching. I mean, it's just so incredible what you've done. I just can't thank you enough for that.
This morning I was on at NYU Abu Dhabi. They are doing a couple productions of her plays, and so they watched the film. The students watched the film, and we had an interview. We did a Skype call this morning, and they were, it really informs. They were like, I didn't understand Dr. Keel. I didn't understand it until I watched now I'm watching the film, and I get the play, and it just helps inform once her sense of humor, and so a lot of the plays, I don't know, I think it's been amazing to me to see how it affects people directing her work, people acting in her work, studying her, so that's been really heartening, so yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
One last thing. Both Edward Albee and Lanford Wilson taught here at the University of Houston.
Oh,
and
okay.
both of them made a point of recommending that the students read her plays as another view of the craft. So she was remembered and recommended by people at the very highest part of the profession.
Yeah, they both couldn't say enough about her. They both, and Sam Shepard too was a huge, another person who was a big champion of hers too. Thank you for reminding us.
I just had a comment. Really appreciate the film. It's beautifully done. The thing that I think that was most moving to me is how you captured her dignity and how you held that in such a special space. And by, I guess, the editing of it all, and not just taking that piece of her life, it just so captured her in her youth and in her aging process, and in the loss of that, the loss of the memory, but the dignity that remained. And you saw her so clearly through that. I saw her so clearly through that lens, and that's a hard. I think that's a very difficult thing to really capture in the way that you capture it. The human spirit and the dignity.
Well, we really appreciate it. Or if people have more questions, I don't mind.
Just a comment.
Staying on. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting for me when she said and you said that Maria Irene changed lives for people, because I have an example. I'm a playwright, and I was doing interviews for a play that I wrote in New York. I was interviewing actresses in different parts of the world by Skype. And I had the experience to interview an actress from CalArts in California.
Mm-hmm.
So she was telling me a story that she had when she was playing Sarita. So she said that this play changed my life. She said to me. She said, Sarita changed my life. I remember very clearly Sarita. So I asked why, and she started talking to me about Sarita in the way you talk about your close friend, something like that. And then I bought the book that appeared in the movie, like this one, Perfect by Susan Sontag, and start feeling the same way about Irene. So it's really true.
Oh, great. Do you remember what the actor's name was?
Carolina Vargas. She studied MFA in acting in CalArts.
At CalArts. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's great.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Well, thank you all for coming.